Now we're beginning the second chapter, which we have not even touched. The second chapter is about the godly soul. This is like new territory, and by the way, just as a preface, there's some very mature content in here, and it's for people that really can that have mature and deep appreciation for Kabbalah and really understanding how really God is creating the world and creating our souls. So let's look. Perek Beis, V'nefesh Hashenis b'Yisrael. Those words are so beautiful. The second neshama of Yisrael, Hi Chelek Elokani Mal Mamish, is a piece of God Mamish. It means undiluted God consciousness. It's a Chelek because every single one of us have it. You all have a soul. But at the same time, it's not a Chelek like something is split from God, because God doesn't split. So it's yours, and at the same time one with God, and it's mamish, undiluted godliness. So that you're going to have to learn more Tanya, because that's all through Tzimtzumim, where the original light remains intact. Here, the Mashalim we're going to get is going to show us how that pure essence is transferred. How the pure essence is transferred. Oftentimes the mashal is given, only because you asked, I wasn't going to say this now, of the sun. When you see a ray of light from the sun, so you look at that ray of light coming in through the window. Does that ray of light have an identity? Can you see the ray of light? You could, let's say it's a little bit dusty. Right?
Yeah.
It's very beautiful. You can see the ray of light, right? Does he look like an individual ray of light?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see that light, right? Look, there's a ray of light. It's that ray of light. I can go into another window and see another different ray of light. So you might think that that's an individual ray of light, and he has his own identity. But if you trace him back to his source, what does he look like on the face of the sun? He dissolves into the power and the infiniteness, so to speak, of the sun. Now, is the ray of light also shining on the face of the sun? Yeah, kol sheken. If it's shining down here, then all the more so it's shining from whence it came from. So the ray of light is shining from where it came from, but is totally absorbed in the source of it. Our soul is like the ray of light. It's one with the sun. It looks like it's its own independent being. So you can have a ray of light coming in from this window. Chazal speak this way, and a ray of light coming in from this window. And a ray of light says, look at this, it's its own light. But no, look at this one. And you say, look up, they all came from the same one. That is a very important mashal used in Kabbalah to explain how all of us are different rays of light, but we all are from the same source. And really all of us on the source itself, nothing changed, nothing split off. How does God give of that essence? It's emanating from God. And he gave us something called the sun and rays of light from the sun as a way to understand that. That mashal changed my life. When I just started thinking about that analogy, I was like, oh my goodness, that is awesome. Okay? Now, we're going to bring two analogies. They're all highly Kabbalist. I know I'm using that word a lot today, Kabbalah, because this chapter is just like, is awesome. But in a language that's very, very relevant and easy to understand, two analogies of how our soul was transferred into us. I give you another one also. That moment, that's talking about when God blew the living soul into Adam. It says he blew it in. Do you know? All of creation was made through what? Speech. Except one thing. The soul. The soul was not given through speech. The soul was given through breath. Is that not interesting? You know what else was given through speech? The mountains, the stars, this table.
Physical.
Not only physical. The angels were made through speech. The highest celestial beings are made through speech. Which means they're all on an equal footing. There's one thing that's given through breath. The godly soul. The nefesh hashenis b'Yisrael. The chelik l'kan mimal mamish. The yid pata ap nishmas chaim. And God blew in the living soul. K'may shekosav b'zoyer HaKodesh. It's brought down in the Emek HaMelech. Man de nofach mitoichei nofach. The one who blows, man de nofach, the one who blows, mitochei, from his innards he blows. Perish mitoichei yusoi, mipnimi yusoi, from his inner essence. When you blow from the deep depths. Shetoich yusoi pnimi sachis, sheba adam moitzi benefichos bekoyah. That the inside and the panemius of your life force comes out when you blow forcefully, strongly. I always tell the story that when I first got married, we were visiting Toronto, and we were visiting our families, and my mom got us like an air mattresses that we could, different air mattresses to sleep on the floor, and there was only one problem, which was we couldn't get like a blow up, one of those things to blow it up, So I said, "Don't worry about that." It's like, I got this one. Cracked my, my knuckles, and I said, "I'll blow it up." Now you know what it means to blow up an air mattress. So, and meanwhile, my mom and my wife were like, on the phone trying to find one of those pump things and Canadian Tire. Yeah! Blow up that air mattress. And, I kept going. After about a minute, I was getting very lightheaded. But you okay over there? My sheet? I'm yeah! I got this one. And I literally was fainting at that point. And I thought it basically would be pretty well blown up. I look at the thing and nothing is blown up. Eventually I was lying down, my wife brings a cup of water, done. Okay, in the meantime they came with a pump and that was it. I want to do an exercise. Okay, on the count of three, we're all going to blow as forcefully as possible. And you tell me how long you could go for, okay? 1, 2, 3. Who needs who needs pot, Who needs you're feeling you're feeling it, right? You're lightheaded. Why? Try to run a marathon now. Why can't you do that? Your life force was how long could you speak for? You could basically speak indefinitely, right? Because how much air comes out when you speak? Okay, on 3, we're all just going to say random things. Keep it clean. 1, 2, 3. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. And feel the pumps of that. How's everybody doing? Baruch Hashem, the Tanya's gewaldig. Hodol Hashem echazda. You felt the plumes of breath coming out. How much came out? Minimal. Therefore, because not that much of your life force is coming out, you could keep it going. But to breathe forcefully, it's drawn deep. That is what it means that God blew into us. God doesn't get tired. It's an analogy. God drew from his inner essence and blew that into Adam and put that into us. What does it mean that he spoke everything else into existence? It came from a more superficial part of God's essence. You get it? That's why when we said you could speak, not that much is coming out. When you breathe forcefully, something deep is coming out. The only thing in creation that came through breath is the neshama. the godly soul. Okay? That is awesome. Usually I spend like days on that line, but we're moving because this is a much more advanced chevra. A second analogy. Okay? Kach al derech moshel. Another analogy. Okay, this is a very mature analogy. Nishmas Yisrael, Ola b'machshava, says that Klal Yisrael went up on Hashem's mind. Why did Hashem make the world? Bereshis v'shil Yisrael shenikra Reshis. For Yisrael that are called Reshis. The purpose was for Yisrael. That Yisrael, and by the way, Adam was Yisrael, and he was supposed to have gotten the entire world to be Yisrael and to shine that God consciousness to all of creation. Except that he made a mistake, and then only Abraham was able to then lock it into his descendants. Anyone who wants to join can join. Okay? That neshama that came down to Adam, okay? It says that it went up on Hashem's mind. Kedirsiv. What does it mean that it went up on Hashem's mind, Yisrael? Kedirsiv, like the pasuk says, B'ni b'chor Yisrael. Klal Yisrael, you're like my firstborn son. Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. Children you are to God. So you see, Klal Yisrael is being referred to as a child. Now, whenever you have a child, there's a definition. There must be a father. There's no immaculate conception. Children come from a father and a mother. That's where they come from. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Not the stork, and not whatever else they want to tell you. It's the father delivering a seed, and the mother taking that seed and then expanding that for the course of 9 months, and then delivering that child. Okay, that's how it goes. That Klal Yisrael is called a son means that there's a father. Means that Hashem is like the father. Are you following so far? That when Hashem said we're like a son, didn't mean that Klal Yisrael is like, special, like a distant analogy. Just like a father's like, nice to his kids, so he's going to be nice. Well, let's take this analogy all the way. Okay, this is mature. So when Klal Yisrael is called the son, it means, where did that son come from? So in the good books, they speak this out. That Klal Yisrael came from Hashem's thoughts, that he, so to speak, inseminated the seed of Yisrael, and we are the son that was, so to speak, inseminated by God's thoughts. We were birthed into being. That's where we came from. Through that type of an intimate act is where the soul of Klal Yisrael came from, which is a very intimate experience. The soul doesn't just come from the lower region, i.e., it doesn't just come from the sac and the seed that comes out. The soul comes from thoughts of the Father at the moment of conception. The thought that the Father has at that moment is bringing down that soul. It goes down, so to speak, the spinal column of the Father, becoming more physicalized, taking on a spiritual shape, until it comes into a seed. You know how small those seeds are? They're inconceivably smaller than poppy seeds. There's millions within a tiny space, and then comes out into the world. The seed that comes out into the world, is that a physical seed?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know how much DNA is in that seed? It could stretch to the here and the sun and back. A tremendous amount of information. It's physical, but it's almost like spiritual. It's like the bridge. Remember we talked about that with the blood and Nefesh Bahamas? It's like the bridge between something totally physical and because the seed, it's physical. You can look at it, but look at the information there. The moment of the Father's thought is a spiritual moment, the Father and His thought are deeply unified. That spiritual thought then becomes cloaked and spiritually becomes more built up until the point that it gets to a place that it's becoming so far from its spiritual source, it actually turns into a physical but totally spiritual seed. You got it? That's the interface, the mamutza, the interface point. And then the mother takes it and then unwinds it. That's the analogy of Klal Yisrael. Hashem thought it. The soul came through all the spiritual worlds, literally through all, becoming more physicalized, but not physical yet. Just taking on spiritual definition. That's called tzimtzum, until the point that it came into this world. The soul, though, is totally unified with its original source, with Hashem's thoughts. Let's see that inside. You got to just hear this now without any questions. Perish kamoisha haben nimshach memoich ha'av. Just like the son comes from the mind of the father at the moment of conception. That's why there's so much spoken about in the Zohar and stuff, and even in basic halacha, in the Shulchan Aruch, in Reish Mem, don't look there unless you're getting married, about what you should and certainly should not be thinking about in those times of intimacy, as to make sure that that moment is a very holy moment when the seed is about to come out. Kach kaviyachol, also, so to speak, nishmas kol ish Yisrael, every single yidla, nimshach memachshavtai, comes out from Hashem's thoughts. V'chachmasa yisborach, Hashem's chachma, the highest place, so to speak, of Hashem's consciousness. Even though Hashem is way beyond this, but the fact that we can even say that Hashem and His thoughts, this is called chachma d'atzilus. The iyu chakim v'loy b'chachma yediyah. But Hashem and His chachma is not like two different things. Me and my chachma, my conscious wisdom, my ability to receive from a higher place, and me and something else. With Hashem, it's all one thing. There's no Hashem and anything else. It's all one. But it is a place up there called the chachma d'atzilus that we can even say that it's hu v'chachma, there's such a thing. Elohu v'chachma echad. But God in His chachma is not like me and my chachma. God in His chachma is one. K'mashkaz v'Rambam, like the Rambam explains. Shehu ha'mada v'hu ha'yodeh v'hu ha'yediyah. I'll explain that. If you look there in the parish in Yisrael HaTorah, a very, very important thing. I suggest everybody sees it. I'd like to see this piece in the Rambam in Hilchos Yisrael HaTorah in Perik Beis Halacha Yud. So the parish explains the following. When it comes to consciousness, there's three dimensions. Okay? How do you know something? So he says it over here. I'm reading you from inside the parish of the Rambam. Ketzad. When a person knows something, you recognize some shape, some form. Kamoi. That you say like, oh, I know what that chair looks like. Oy habayis. Or I went to that, someone says, I want to build a mansion. They're like, oh, and it looks like this. And he starts thinking about it. Or or what Earth looks like, or what the constellations looks like. So in the beginning, you know potentially what a chair looks like. I say chair, and you're like, I know what a chair could be. I have the power to know what chairs are, but you haven't yet crystallized it in your consciousness. It's you. Even before I tell you about a chair, you can know what chairs look like, right? The concept of a chair has not yet carved itself in your consciousness, but you can know about chairs. When I tell you about a chair, that concept becomes more and more emblazed in your consciousness. You start getting it more and more. It becomes more clear to you. But when you really get it, When you really get it, it becomes carved into your consciousness. So what do you have here? Three things. What are the three things? You have the guy that knows things, you, me. You have tzura sakise, you have the image of the chair, hayedua. Vehadash shaba yoideh ze'atzura. You have the ability in you to know chairs and really get it clear what a chair is. So put another way, I tell you something, you don't get it yet. Like somebody says a joke, you're like, I didn't get it. And then he explains it more, like, So there's three things here. There's you, there's the concept of the joke, and then the ability to understand jokes. Okay? There's you, there's the ability to understand a joke, and there's the joke. It's three things. Because you don't get it right away. And then all of a sudden, you could though get it, because you have this ability to get jokes. And then all of a sudden you get it. When it comes to God, there's no three things. It's all one thing. It's not God, the world, and his ability to understand the world. God, the world, and his awareness of the world and understanding of the world is all one. We can't fully understand that. It's beyond us, but we can start to understand it. We can begin this process of understanding it for all of eternity. It's enough for us to know now, though, that we work differently than God. We have these three faculties. They're very unified. Like you and knowing the chair and the chair itself, once it's in your mind, like it becomes like integrated in one. And imagine a person doing artwork, like them and the art, it's like one. But it's not one. Or a musician playing their instrument, their flute, their clarinet. They're like mamish. You don't know where they end and the flute begins. And like the whole thing is, but there are different things here. God, it's absolute oneness. So when we say that the Son comes from the Father's mind, that's the most unified place inside the Father. So the Son is very deeply connected to the Father. But when we talk about that the soul of Yisrael comes from the mind of Hashem, that's mamish one with Hashem. That's very deep. That's mamish one with Hashem. That's where our soul comes from. Okay? He's going to build this mashal up more and explain it more. This is mamish like other universe stuff. Bezrat Hashem, we should be zeicher to Mashiach King. Amen.